Hello and welcome to today's episode of Real Life, Real Love. I am your host, Sarah Michelle, and this is Hayley Henderson. Today, we're going to be talking about masculine and feminine energy and the importance of the masculine staying in integrity and following through on the things he says that he promises to do. And when I say promise, I really just mean anything he says, because anything he chooses to say should be a verbal commitment right away. He shouldn't be saying things that he doesn't intend to. Sorry if that's noisy. Maybe I should shut my windows. They just came right past as I was talking. Anyway, that's what we're going to be talking about today, and why it's important to meet and be with a man who has integrity and can follow through on those things. Also, if you have someone who doesn't, how that impacts your relationship. You want to start us off, or you want me to get going?
I try to remember, whether it's like talking to a woman or a man, but when it's coming to like, and especially because I worked in positions of authority where I need to tell a man what to do, and they know that I'm not trained in their field, so they just sort of try and, pull one over or say no or whatever. I try to remember everything's in agreement. So if you're in a relationship or a potential, like if you're just dating or just getting to know somebody and they go, I'll call you at 7:00 and they don't, or, those types of things, like I try to reverse engineer and figure out what is really going on. Is it because they're saying yes because they don't want to disappoint me? Like if it's like an potential or an intimate relationship, marriage or what have you, are they just not wanting to disappoint me? And so they say yes. And things to find out stuff like that, I've just gone, quietly like inquired about their relationship with their mom and figured out like what like feminine figures in their life have expected them to do things they don't want to. Because like at this end of the day, like if it's an agreement for that person to like take out the trash or mow the lawns or do all the things that I don't want to do that. Like I've never wanted to do that. When I was younger, my dad was disappointed that I was a girl. So my dad would try and get me to do boy things. And I am not masculine. I am not that kind of person. Like I can get out there and do it. And I am a single mom. There is stuff I got to do. But it is not my favorite. The towel rail is broken and I can't fix it. And somebody's going to have to do it for me. And there are things that like in relationships that I've discovered like men don't necessarily want to do it either. So you can come to an agreement about that if you figure out like, was his mum always demanding and expecting? Was his dad always demanding and expecting? Is he working with women who are, like whipping the carpet out from underneath him when he's trying to do a really good job? Are they degrading? Are there experiences in his life where he struggled with it? Or does he just not like taking out the trash? And can you come up with another agreement? Or is he just not the type of person who wants to mow the lawn? Like these things I just try and dissect and go, what is it? Like what could be the thing? Because at the end of the day, as much as I don't like doing the trash, he may not either. So just because he's the man doesn't mean to say he will like it, or like those default roles. And, having these conversations are important because we get to redefine how our life functions. And I saw this conversation earlier this week that was talking about functional relationships versus healthy relationships. So just because the man is doing the man things doesn't mean to say that you have a healthier relationship. It just means he may not even like doing it, but he may just be disgruntled and just doing it anyway. So having these conversations, as much as sometimes it's not cool, like it's not cool and stuff doesn't work out, it's not the worst thing in the world. Like if you're with somebody and they're just constantly not showing up and they're falling out of integrity with themselves, and you may be like just feeling like this is so shit, I wanted a better life, he said this, and like it's not the worst thing in the world to have these conversations, because what if it frees you both up? What if you can, I don't know, get a cleaner that can come in twice a week and take out the trash and wipe down the dust on the windowsills, the things that you don't like doing. And what if you both are like, oh my God, if we could just outsource this, and you can both free yourself up from these traditional imposed roles. These are not realistic. sometimes. I mean, I don't think it's realistic to expect a man to mow the lawns because why? Because I don't like it? That doesn't really make sense that it has to be his job. We can pay somebody who likes to do it.
I don't know who you find that likes to do it, but I know what you mean. Like you can hire someone to do it. But let's take it back before that. Like if he says he will mow the lawn, actually, let's use a different example. If you're complaining about how dirty the garage is and you can't get your car parked in there, right? And he says, I'll clean out the garage for you this weekend. He needs to clean out the garage for you, or he can hire it out and stuff like that. He can choose how it's done. But he, in order to stay in integrity with his word, needs to be able to follow through on that without you reminding him, without you nagging him, without you begging him, because it doesn't work. And the thing is that a lot of guys will get upset because like they'll sit down on the couch to relax and watch TV or whatever for a while. And then she'll be like, hey, you said you were going to clean out the garage. And then they're like, I'm going to go out later. But the thing is that if you've set the precedent in the relationship from the beginning that when you say you're going to do something and you follow through on it, she's not going to come in and do that. The reason she's coming in is because you've set the precedent that you sit down and watch TV and either forget about it or procrastinate and don't do it. And so she's trying to make it happen, right? And that's forcing her into her masculine because now she's keeping everything organized. She's making sure things get executed. So now she's no longer in her feminine. She's not open and loving and pleasure seeking. She's not ready to have sex with you, cook you meals, do whatever these sort of kind of traditional feminine things are that when she's functioning from her feminine and she's open and soft and wanting to nurture and wanting to share love, she's not doing any of those things because now she's in her masculine and she's leading and guiding and all of that sort of stuff. And then these men get so mad. And it's like they need to understand that don't make the commitment in the first place. It's not like, okay, so if we go back to your lawn example, right? Like he doesn't have to commit to doing the lawn every week. But if he says, I'll take care of the lawn, then he needs to take care of the lawn. Otherwise, they can have a talk about it or whatever. But if he commits to doing something and then he doesn't follow through, and then you have to have the conversation, like it's already a major issue. It's already caused damage to the relationship. Because this is just one thing she's going to stick in her mind. And it's not so much about remembering it to bring it up later and use it as ammunition. It's just the way it works, right? Because we're always testing our man, even on a subconscious level, to figure out who we can trust, who we can depend on, who's secure and stable for us. And if you can't follow through on your word on basic things, we know innately that we can't trust you with the big stuff. How do we know you're going to be there for us? But if you follow through on the things like saying you'll call at 7, saying you'll be home from work at 5, like those sort of things, then we know. And our nervous system is at rest and we don't have to worry about micromanaging or nagging and that sort of stuff. All of that comes from a place of us being forced into our masculine because our needs aren't being met and he's not in integrity with his word.
And they translate into physical touch and then bedroom and stuff. And that's where I think it rolls over into that parental role, which is why I've discovered in the past, if I figure out some of why he's saying it but not doing it or whatever is the drama, sometimes it's because you start stepping into your more motherly type role, and that's where it becomes
masturbating for it.
It's so gross. I mean, for me, in the past, when a man has constantly let me down, I've just thought, don't touch me. Don't. I need a partner. And I try to remind myself, sometimes our language will tell us what it is we're seeking, like, because we may be stuck in our emotions and a bunch of stuff might be going on. And that's why sometimes when you have a conversation with them, just be like, hey, babe, what's going on? Like, and if they'll, I'm so tired. Okay, cool. So everybody gets tired every day. So what are we going to do about that? Like, how can we just reprioritize, or, what are all the things that like I'm showing up and doing that I don't necessarily wanted to do? I come back to making it an agreement, because if he is out of integrity with himself and doesn't want to have the conversation with me, well, then I can make decisions accordingly and decide. I know that we can't have relationships. Sorry, this jumper is itchy. It's cold here and I'm not enjoying the cold. I like the sun. So I'm like, I want to take this jumper off. Trying not to look like I'm itchy from the conversation. If he's struggling, it needs to be a conversation. Like, it needs to be a partnership or a potential partnership conversation. He's going to have to show up in some way, shape, or form and participate in his life. He can't just leave the garage. He can't just leave the lawns. He can't just leave the things he said yes to. And it's where we approach it so different, because we see it more network like. We see how that falls into this conversation, into this thing, and this is going to be, we're not going to be able to get the car in, and it's not going to be do this thing, and then in the morning. Whereas he just sees it as a task. It's a yes or a no sometimes. Doesn't necessarily the connections between every other thing. I try to remind myself that joke of like how men's thoughts are like in a box that is touching nothing else. And so he's thinking this garage is an isolated situation where it's not in relation to any other thing that may happen. Whereas you're like the internet superhighway, everything is connected and everything is touching. So you'll panic about it. Maybe it's related to 5 other things that may or may not happen. Whereas he's just like, it's just the garage. So like straight away, there's like a disconnect.
That's a good point. I didn't mean to cut you off, but it is a very good point that for us, it's connected to other things. And so understanding your own emotions about it. I think it's interesting too, like you're talking about having this conversation with him, but I think you need to be careful and conscious about what kind of conversation you're going to have with him when you do have it. Because if you come in, what?
Don't attack him.
Yeah, you don't want to attack him, but you want to be conscious of, first of all, you want to decide if you want to show up in your masculine or feminine energy. Because if your goal is to stay in your feminine and keep the polarity as you're going through this, there's going to be a different conversation to be had, a different structure to what you're doing. Whereas, and some people don't mind stepping into their masculine at sometimes in the relationship and being like, nope, this is something that's important to me. I'm going to lead and I feel good leading from my masculine. But you do need to be conscious of like, what is your relationship structure and how do you want to approach it? Because a lot of men find it, if you're already in a relationship with a man where for the most part you guys are practicing polarity, it can feel really emasculating to him if you come after him and have these conversations in your masculine, right? Because you're taking charge and he's going, wait, I should be here. But if he's already not doing well in his masculine, it's going to be really hard. It's not impossible. It's going to be really hard for you to approach the conversation from your feminine. So if you're one of those couples that are learning how to do polarity and you're still figuring it out, it might make more sense for you to step a little bit into your masculine there. I guess you just I don't have a hard and fast rule. And like when I have a client, I don't insist that they do it a certain way. It's more like as they're telling me what's going on, I just help them understand, okay, but when you do it that way, you're stepping into your masculine. Is that truly what you want to do? And if they're like, no, then I just help them rephrase it and find a different way to communicate so they can have their needs met. I will say, like, for clarity purposes, for the people watching, when you're in your feminine, like you're drawing in what you desire, you're not going after it. So when he's not taking care of the garage or something, you could form it as like you might not need to say you need to get out there and get it done by the end of the weekend or something that would be more direct. You could say something like, it's upsetting me that the garage isn't getting done. I'm trying to think of, like, I would say more than that. If I was in an actual situation, I would probably, say at least 2 to 3 sentences of, like, but I wouldn't tell him what to do, right? I would tell him what's bothering me and leave it at that. He's either going to ask questions and engage in a conversation, or he's going to hear that and he's going to go, I need to go get that done. But you're not walking up and saying, hey, you promised me you'd get the garage cleaned and you haven't done it yet. Get out there and do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it has to be an invitation. It has to be, he needs to, I think of it like he needs to participate in his life. Like, if he doesn't want to do any house, I would be like, it takes a while to get to that point, because that means you need to step back and be like, okay, I'm frustrated with this. So sometimes talking to a girlfriend helps to see that perspective. So if a girlfriend has come to you and said, hey, he's not pulling his weight, and you're like, no, it's fine, he tells me that he will, and then you keep being frustrated by it, like stepping back away and seeing the bigger picture and going, oh, okay, he's doing no maintenance at the house and I'm doing all of these things. Okay, he lives here. This is a participation sport that we both need to be on the same page. Okay. And in the feminine, it's an invitation for this conversation. It's invitation for him to take action. It's invitation for, not because it's like, I think if you set them up for success, because you think about how this garage or this empty bin or whatever is going to relate to like 5 other things, and he just sees it as a full bin, I'll do it tomorrow, or a garage that can wait till next week, like who cares, just park on the street or in the driveway or whatever, because you see it so differently. It's okay to set him up for success and say, okay, all right, I think about this so different and I really need to have these things done, and it's going to make me so much happier and feel so much better at myself and feel so much more available and loving and all this stuff. And you can only see that when you step back in reflection. And you can only see that when you journal or talk to a girlfriend or meditate or take the space to see the bigger picture, like you're managing the situation as opposed to just reacting and just being like, oh my God, can you please take the trash out? Or, something that is the typical thing that they've heard. And, we're at an age where there's potential the person that you're with has either been down this road with you for like the 10, 15, last 20 years, or it's a second or third serious relationship. And those previous ones didn't work out for a reason. And if you ask the average person who's come from a split relationship, whether it's the truth or not, I find irrelevant. If that man has a perspective, his ex was nagging, that's his reality. And it's not up to us to say yes or no or agree or disagree with whatever that was. But sometimes there's just an indication of their predetermined potential expectation of this relationship. And if you approach it different to that, your default, which is probably what your mom did, a lot of our moms were the type of moms that smacked their babies, smoked, nagged their husbands. Like, there's a huge amount of moms that did that. They may be different now, but that was our default when we were younger. And I've learned this myself. Like, I've learned that nagging part of me, and that's part of, how we have these conversations, is because I've sat with myself and just gone, oh, that is a gross habit. I don't want to associate myself with that. And I've learned it doesn't get what I want anyway. I mean, who doesn't want?
I used to feel like nagging was what I had to do to get something done. And when I took a step back and realized nagging is an indication that my need isn't being met, I was like, oh, okay. Now I can figure out how to communicate the need. Now I can set a boundary if a boundary needs to be set around this. Also, one of the things you said, I'm trying to remember what you said specifically. The point was that what I thought of was you can be proactive about this too. Because I almost said praising your man, but I really actually don't like that term very much. I'm not sure that the masculine likes praise as much as they like appreciation.
Yeah.
And if you can share your appreciation of the things that he is doing well, he wants to do more of that. The masculine naturally wants to give and see the feminine happy because that's when he receives, right? Like he feels through us. So the more joy and pleasure that you're experiencing, the more he's experiencing too. And so when you can say things like, I've been dating quite a bit recently, and I always make it a point to say things, like, I love when you open my door. That feels so great for me. Things like that you're like, maybe in your mind, you're like, that should go without saying. But guys are so used to not being appreciated, to not being seen, heard, understood, that when someone is recognizing their effort, they're like, yes, this feels so good to me. And it's very magnetic for them.
Yeah.
And that can set you up like in the dating process because it's setting him up to succeed and fulfill your desires and needs. But it's also giving you the opportunity to watch him, to observe on those little, like you said at the beginning, those little commitments that are, he said he's going to call me at 7. Does he call me? I don't even honestly care so much if he follows through on calling. If he can't call though, does he follow up and say, hey, I'm running late at work. It's not going to be 7. And then say something else, right? Like, I'll call you at 8 or I'll follow up with you tomorrow or whatever. Like, it's okay with me that things change and shift. It's more about,
Communication.
yeah, communication.
Yeah.
It's not so much that he has to do exactly what he said, it's that he needs to follow through. And if things change, he needs to let you know what's changed. And it's interesting because I've had relationships both ways. And when you're in one where you can trust the person to communicate, it just, all of that anxiety and like nagging, all that sort of stuff, it just dissipates on its own. Like it's not something you're even consciously trying not to do. You don't need to, because when he's followed through on his word so many times of I'll be home at 5, when he's not home at 5 one night, you don't start getting angry or anything like that. You're like, oh, something must have come up. He's usually here. And then you call to figure out what's going on. Or what, you know what I mean? Like it's,
Yeah. Well, if he follows through or communicates and participates, he's creating a safe container for you to trust. And that trust creates that yummy feelings of surrender and lovingness, and your eyes change, your voice changes. And that's what, it creates this space between you where he feels appreciated. And what you're saying about appreciation before and acknowledging it, men need to hear it. I have heard a lot lately about how men did not know how, the word is, upset about our bodies we feel. And there's been like this really big movement of men making social media posts in response to women feeling really embarrassed and ashamed about their bodies and the sizes and stuff. And men are just like, wait, what? When did this happen? They just didn't know because we had the information. And I think it's so important to not hide the information. It's not like, I'll go tell them all of your problems. But if you just share with an open heart, which obviously you need that container and trust, which is why cultivating that space between you and like the give and take and the participation and conversations and being brave and vulnerable and asking him to show up and do his part too, you can have those brave conversations. And the more we stop holding ourselves back, the more honest and authentic relationships we can have. And then it just keeps getting deeper and deeper and more like better orgasm, incredible holidays. Your daily life functions better, but you're also in a healthy relationship, not just, there's so many people who are in functional relationships that it loses its lackluster after a while. They're just like, over the honeymoon phase. It's like, well, no, that person may just be functional and it may work, but you have this like, oh, I want more. Like you want to bite that cheesecake, or you want to smell that coffee. Like, you want to participate. You don't just want to know there's cheesecake and coffee. You want to participate in this. You want to feel this. You want to taste the sweat. You want to know, because this is life. This is why what my experience, functional relationships are fine if that's what you want. But I feel like we're all admitting we want healthy relationships. We need to have this confrontation sometimes. We need to be brave. We need to be vulnerable. We need to say, this is not working, that you don't follow through on your commitments. It's not working that you're out of integrity. And not being like, I'm going to throw you away because you're out of integrity. It's more like asking him as a human being to participate in this conversation and the functionality, and then creating the healthy aspect of it and inviting him, because you're not telling him, hey, you fucked up, you didn't do the garage. You're like, what way could I be in him into this conversation? Like, inviting him into, this is hurting me, or this is painful, or this is uncomfortable. Like, what are the things that you're feeling? Like, so yes, the garage is not done, but what are you feeling about it?
I think that's so true. And something, well, honestly, I think we kind of gaslight ourselves out of it as women. That it does physically, when we're in our feminine, we feel things in our body, and it does physically hurt us when he's not following through on his word, his commitments. And if we slow down enough and get into our feminine, we can feel it. And he needs to know that.
Like, it's like, you can say, you know, if he doesn't call you at 7. So for me, I have such a restrictive life in some ways, because if I don't show up or do something, nobody does. And so I need a partner who realizes there's nobody to catch it if he doesn't. And so I'm nice. I'm not an aggressive, confrontational person, but stuff needs to happen, and I'm going to be really honest about it, because it has to happen. And like, if you say you're going to be there at 7 or call at 7, I actually have that expectation, because I would never let you down without communicating. And if he doesn't, I'm going to communicate with him how that made me feel, because that's my reality. But it takes time to step into this. It takes time to, like, have a girlfriend that you can call and be like, oh my God, this happened. And she'll hopefully say, how do you feel? Or you can, you know, message a person or have the conversation, journal, meditate, do something where you're like recentering, silencing all of this ego-based stuff. Oh, there's something going past. And you can have these conversations that help you understand what it is that you're feeling and what you're wanting to get from this. And you can say, hey, babe, it actually really upset me that you didn't do the garage, because I wasn't able to I think you said before, put the car in there. And if I didn't put the car morning, I was going to unravel the things that this was like all bound up for you, and all of these things that were not going to work. And at the core of it is, you don't feel heard, seen, valued, safe. And if you don't, if you don't feel those things, you don't want to talk to him. You don't want to communicate with him. You don't want to make him toast. Make your own. Like, it just becomes that, like, well, toast is way easier than the garage. I'm sure you can take care of that. Like, those kind of conversations. And if I haven't communicated it's pain that this stuff didn't happen for me, I end up being that person who's like, you know, like really gross about it. Yeah. And if I have the conversation, I'm like, hey, honey, that really sucked when you didn't do that, and I assumed you did, or you didn't call me at 7. I was literally waiting. So I had, you know, as a single mom, I had organized my daughter to, you know, have a shower, do her homework, get everything done. She's sitting reading her book, and it was the only time that we were going to be able to communicate that night. So, you know, I'd structured my life around this conversation to take place. And when I wasn't valued enough to be told, I mean, emergencies happen, but that's okay. But if they just go, oh, I forgot, to me, in my highly organized brain, I'm like, put it in your fucking diary then. I don't know. Make it so that you can actually prioritize this conversation with me. And so I'll say that. I'll be like, I don't know, set a reminder. I really need to feel like you want to have this conversation with me. And I have literally restructured the last 4 hours of my day so I can give you this half an hour of my time. And that's effort for me. So if you don't reciprocate in some way, it really trips me up. And I'm going to stop doing that. And you're going to find out how much space in my life I am creating and not making for you anymore. And you're going to have no time with me. And so it's like a flow on effect that he may not know. He may not know I just spent the last 4 hours rearranging my afternoon so I can have this conversation. And if I didn't tell him, because I have this exterior, and a lot of us do, where we just look like it's fine if we don't say it. Like people are like, oh, I didn't know you were struggling because you didn't say anything. It's like, so you have to communicate this and how you feel. And if he knows I did that for the last 4 hours, and, I've done something to create the space in my life for him, then that's a different conversation, because he's going to go, oh, shit. Okay, well, straight away, I never have to do that. When I'm talking to people that I've dated and been in relationships with, if they're a single dad, they don't have to do that, because every second week they have space 24 hours a day apart from working where they can do whatever they want. Like, they can just fall asleep on the couch for hours. There are no ramifications. I can't do that. So it's a completely different look at this 7 p.m. conversation. And if you don't communicate, they don't know, because they have such a different life looking at it. There's my rant.
It is. No, it's okay. I was going to say, I had a date at one point with someone, and I had to drive home through the country late at night. And so I specifically told him, like, I don't like doing this. I don't feel super safe about it. So I'm going to text you when I get home. I just want to know that somebody's waiting for me to get home, so that if something, and I was like very clear. I left, got home, texted him I was home safe. He texted me the next morning and said, sorry, I fell asleep. And then proceeded to say he had a good time and asked me on a second date. And I was like, this is a big red flag for me. Like, maybe some other women would look past that, but he should have cared about my safety without me even saying anything. But when I actually bring it up and ask him to care about it, and he agrees to care about it, and then he falls asleep in the 20 minutes it took me to get home, no thank you. Like, no thank you. I don't know what else to say. Anyway, so I'll wrap it up here if you're good with that. Talking about the masculine needing to follow through with what he commits to, so that we have that. I hope this isn't messing me up. I just got a notification on my computer there. I hope it didn't stop my voice coming through. Needing to follow through on his commitments so that he can create that space for you to be in your feminine, for you to open up. Surrender was a beautiful word. You used that earlier. I totally agree with that. To surrender into your feminine so that you can experience that pleasure and joy and be able to share that and appreciation with him. And then everything starts to roll forwards beautifully together. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please like or share this. And if you have any questions or comments about it, please leave them below, and we'd be happy to get back to you. Thank you for joining us today.